Chapter 7. Resistance. Barrington County Jail. "This place won't hold us," Bull shouts as two guards escort him in full chains and shackles to his holding cell. Each of the GX operatives are placed in a one-man holding cell to await arraignment. "Shut it, you," one of the guards says, shoving Bull into the cell. Bull grins, flexing his muscles enough to break the restraints and hand the pieces back to the guard. Even without full access to the GX parasite in his blood, the man is a terrifying specimen of raw strength. "As soon as the time is right, I'm out of here." "Keep someone posted on these guys at all times," the guard tells his companion nervously. "There's something wrong with them. Their latest toxicology results won't be back until tomorrow afternoon." Another guard walks briskly towards them. "Get the new arrivals ready for transport again. The sheriff advises they are too dangerous to be held locally. There's a federal detainment facility near Macon that's been cleared to hold them until their trial." "Good," the first guard says. "They make me nervous. I've never met anyone in my life as strong as them. Whatever drugs they're on makes them too dangerous for our jail to contain. As soon as the transport vans arrive, they're gone." "We'll be gone before those transport vans get to you," Bull says with a grin. "I'm gonna enjoy squeezing your little heads like zits until they pop." "I'd be more careful if I were you," the second guard says, hitting Bull's hand with the butt of his gun. "It'd be a shame if you never made it onto that transport." Bull continues to smile. "I'm gonna shove your head up his ass." He points to the first guard. "And then I'm gonna shove yours up his," he adds, pointing to the third guard. Kept sedated, the members of the crew sit in their holding cells, unable to mentally contact their parasites. With the boosted strength of the GX parasite, they could easily break free of their confinement. Luckily for the public and the staff of the county jail, they were deemed too violent and dangerous to be held without sedation. Raven strains to extend his shadow from his cell, but cannot gain the assistance of his parasite to make it work. Without the knowledge of how to inwardly project his consciousness, the warrior is blocked from receiving any conversation with his parasite. After being checked in through medical, each member of the crew was sedated and put through hours of intensive questioning by Medina detectives. Questions regarding motive, affiliation, terrorism, manifestos, and associations with students and staff were all asked, without receiving useful answers. "These jokers are puckered up tight," Detective Carl Shipley complains, leaving the interrogation room after questioning Adam Young, aka Scorp. "We've got positive IDs on all these guys, but other than that, we have nothing really." "Is it true they're all graduates of Clavemont High School?" Shipley's partner, Detective James Pender, asks. He looks through Shipley's interrogation notes, having been called in from his days off early. Shipley nods. "Yeah, weird, ain't it? I'm guessing that whatever their game is, it's based in Clavemont. We need to check the identities of all the missing teens in Clavemont over the last few years and see if any of their parents are wealthy enough to be ransom targets." "That'll take a while. The amount of missing persons for that town is astronomical. If they were all teenagers, I'd chalk it up to a mass of runaways associated with the strictness of that town, since it's so self-contained." Pender agrees with his assessment, continuing his thought. "Yet our disappearances range from ages 14 months to 68 years. He groans, pulling at his hair. "The largest case that has ever come through their department, and no one seems to be able to make any headway with it." Shesha and Peril reach the gated entrance, where two armed guards approach their van. "You guys can't park here. This is a restricted area," one of the officers says. Peril agitates his parasite, allowing him to enter the minds of the two men. With minimal effort, he leaves them standing like statues as Shesha drives forward. The gate rolls open, and the two Conco operatives are inside. "Keep driving. They won't follow," Peril says. Shesha is unnerved at how easily the boy can reduce men to vegetables. From the four guard towers, Officers order the van to halt again. Unlike a correctional facility, which allows for visits and special privileges, the holding facility of the sheriff's department is run more like a Russian gulag for inmates that have not yet even entered the official system. Many other precincts drop off criminals they wish to be interrogated here before lawyers and the ACLU have a chance to get to them. The perimeter officer observes the scene and is bothered by it. Dispatch, be advised that we have a suspicious van on grounds that has passed the first checkpoint without any radio or telephone authorization. Moving to investigate, Officer Greg Rogers pulls his vehicle up behind the suspicious van. Beside him on the seat rests a shotgun, which he picks up as he exits. You need to move that vehicle out of here. This is a restricted area. Movement from inside the van. Roger raises his gun and tenses, awaiting a response. If the intruders are hostile, they are likely reaching for their own weapons. On my mark, get inside quickly, Peril says. He kicks open the back doors and vanishes from the van in an instant. A blur of movement flashes across Roger's field of view. He pivots, bringing his gun around in an arc, but is stopped. Shesha blocks the officer's movement by catching him under the arm just above the elbow. Before he can respond, Shesha's other hand strikes at his throat. Blood sprays into the air as the officer's neck is torn open and his body is tossed to the ground. Peril materializes in the first guard tower, quickly killing the officer inside. With a tremendous leap, he bounces to the final tower, and in moments, the glass is splattered with red grime. Shesha licks his fingertips, his eyes transforming due to his excitement. Do not leave any witnesses. We cannot risk being identified, he hisses. The officers' radios continue to squelch as dispatch attempts to maintain control. Officer Rogers, do you copy? What's the status of the vehicle? Is it dangerous? Shesha's foot comes down on the device, reducing it to splinters. We need to hurry. They will be checking on this shortly. Infiltrating the jail through the nearest faculty access door. The steel-reinforced door is blown off its frame by a burst of energy from Peril's open hand. Without even activating his parasite, the boy is able to manifest such powerful energy that Shesha is slightly intimidated by him. Two officers move into their path, raising handguns. Both men hesitate for an instant when they see the intruder's young age. This instant is all the time that Peril requires, expanding his awareness to enter their minds. Flaring out his energy from within the officers' minds, Peril is able to cause their brains to explode in a single loud pop, like red water balloons. The brains of the men are deep fried by Peril's psychic abilities. Each nerve and cell is left blackened and lifeless. Eyes turning white, the men drop to the floor like puppets, whose strings have been severed. Peril grins, sensing more officers approaching from both sides of the hallway's main intersection. The boy prepares to extend his awareness into the minds of his targets, but rapture leaps over his head. The reptilian monstrosity barrels into the wall, leaving a large hole, then immediately pivots with his claws outstretched in a downward arc. The officers shout in pain as Rapture's claws sever arteries and limbs in a violent whirlwind of bloodshed. Angered, Peril enters Rapture's mind, and with the smallest of psychic pinches, causes his mutation to reverse, and the man named Shesha to drop to his knees amidst the blood and gore in utter disbelief. Don't get in my way, Peril growls, making a fist. Electricity-like energy crackles around his hand. Next time, I'll make your brain into jello. Grinding his teeth together in anger, Shesha doesn't dare respond. The proud warrior cannot stand being at the mercy of a child. With Peril's ability to enter anyone's mind and control the electrical impulses coming and going within, he can effectively disable any opponent. Another officer runs down the hallway, skidding to a stop just as soon as he sees the carnage before him. Peril extends his awareness out, but the man fires off a single shot before diving back behind the wall for cover. The shot goes wide, burying into the wall behind Peril, but the youth curses more that his chance to kill the man has quickly vanished. He cannot use his power on an opponent that he doesn't have in his line of sight, Shesha observes, filing the information away in his mind, should he need it again later. The officer leans out just enough to squeeze off a pair of shots to drive both Shesha and Peril around the opposite corner. I'll handle this one. You secure our path to the holding cells. Shesha stands, spurring his parasite back into its activated state. The man's body becomes bulkier, and his eyes turn yellow and slitted. Shesha's nails elongate into sharpened claws, and a thick, muscular tail emerges from his lower back. Rapture leaps through the wall, his clawed hand erupting through the officer's head. Continuing his forward momentum, Rapture slams the man's head into the far wall and reduces it into a dark smear of blood, brains, and hair. The crew is this way, Peril says, walking up to him before pointing down an adjacent hallway. Rapture allows his other senses to go out of focus in order for him to hone in on his ability to feel the distinct energy signatures of other beings. He's impressed at how strong Peril's senses are. He can barely tell the presences of the men, let alone their location, definitively. No more officers are encountered on their run towards the cells, and Rapture wonders if they have already killed every able-bodied man in the building. Detective Shipley looks up from the Clavemont High School case file as he feels the entire building shake from the first explosion of the GX Warriors' infiltration of the jail. Nothing less than an earthquake or tornado should be able to rattle the fortress-like facility. The police station and jail are old, converted from Spanish forts long ago, and are built to withstand an enormous amount of abuse. The fact that the building is shaking deeply troubles the detective. "Man down! Intake corridor!" A voice shouts from the radio before being silenced. Shipley's eyes widen in horror, and he depresses his own radio button. "Dispatch, what is the situation?" When no response is received, he repeats his inquiry. "Any unit. This is 212. Please advise of the situation." 212. This is 417. Communications with the outside have gone down. All perimeter units are unresponsive. Shipley hears the distinctive echoes of gunfire. 417, what is your 20? Kennels. Unable to give a visual of the situation. Was that gunfire? Radio silence from here out, 417. They may be listening in. I will try and find a way to assess the situation. Copy 212. Be careful. Two young officers bang on the detective's door. "What's going on out there?" Shipley asks. "We're under attack," one of the officers says, out of breath from running. "Two of them, both headed straight for us." The cells. They're here for their friends, Shipley immediately thinks, feeling a cold chill within himself. He fears for the world if these monsters are reunited with any allies. "We need to stop them from reaching the holding cells," Shipley orders, standing quickly and drawing his gun. Detective Pender carefully walks the hallway, listening for any signs of disturbance. No longer does he hear gunshots or commotion. Whatever fight his fellow officers were able to put up was short-lived, and is now over. Finally hearing voices, he ducks back around the nearest corner and waits. "Not much opposition in this place," Peril says, disappointed at the lack of resistance to their invasion. "Small town, not a lot of crime," Rapture replies, tasting the air with his tongue. "One more up ahead." Pender tries to backtrack, but Peril is on him in an instant. The officer falls as the boy kicks him in the back of his right knee. Peril holds a hand to the back of the man's head, releasing a pulse of psychic energy and a concentrated shot. The man's eyes turn white, and blood runs out from his eyes, nose, and ears, collapsing to the floor in a heap. The 2 GX mutations leave him and continue towards the holding cells. Finally reaching the cells, Rapture and Peril are greeted by the cheers of the incarcerated. Detective Shipley hangs back, observing the intruders from the cracked door of a pipe chase. "What took so long?" Bull asks, standing up and approaching the bars. A man lies dead at his feet with his skull caved in. "You're lucky we came at all. Your failure did not go unnoticed by Khan." Seeing the fear in the men grow, he continues to speak. "Did you tell the authorities anything?" he asks, baring his teeth. For a moment, the members of the crew worry that reinforcements have not been sent to set them free, but rather to silence them. "No way! They tried to get us to snitch, but we didn't give them shit," Bull shouts. Peril nods, reading the large man's mind for signs of dishonesty. He's telling the truth. "If we can figure out who was behind your ambush, then we can better proceed." "I thought we'd been forgotten," Raven says. "None of us talked. They have no idea who we work for." "How did you get taken at once?" Rapture asks. "Someone ambushed us in the school. He was so fast that none of us could even see him, let alone lay a hand on him. He zapped us with electricity or some shit." Rapture grinds his teeth in anger, guessing the culprit was the same boy who attacked the Clavemont facility and released Yamura. He was young, athletic, and very fast. He also had a GX parasite, Raven explains. Rapture grabs the iron bars angrily. "Impossible! One of our own could not have done this!" "Are we still positive we're the only ones with the parasite? What if a blood sample has been lost or stolen over the years? One viable fragment of the parasite could spawn a new generation rather quickly. I suppose it cannot be ruled out. Who would risk our punitive measures for theft? Greed makes smart people do dumb things." "Has no one ever gone missing? Our enemy could very well be a rogue operative," Darkhold adds. He stands up impatiently, ready to leave. In the past, the crew has been given missions to find and eliminate rogue elements. They have never failed in the end to destroy a traitor, so they wonder who they could possibly have missed. Most rogue elements do not make it off the grounds of the facility in which they are created. How is it possible that this one has managed to stay in hiding for so long? "Let's discuss all of this later when we're back at the facility and out of this hellhole," Raven interrupts. "Open it up so we can leave," Peril says, gesturing towards the reinforced steel doors. Careful to keep his thoughts on the job, Rapture ignores the boy's condescending attitude and begins to strain. The reptilian mutant's muscles bulge, and the iron makes a loud moaning noise. The bars slowly are separated enough that a small man could fit through. "Why couldn't you have escaped on your own? Can't your shadow get past a 2-inch gap?" Rapture asks in annoyance as the leader of the crew squeezes through the opening, once it is large enough. "I think it's something to do with the sedatives that they've kept us on. Our bodies have been unable to fully communicate with our parasites." Rapture frowns with concern. Should the police have stumbled on a way to negate the powers by accident, who could potentially have a more effective solution? He plans on bringing the subject up with Dr. Smith and the supervisors when they return. If he knows those geeks, they'll want blood samples to test the sedatives, before they are completely out of the men's systems. Seeing that he's running out of time, as Rapture sets free both Darkhold and Sting, Detective Shipley emerges from the pipe chase and squeezes off 3 rounds from his handgun into the mutant's back. The rounds fail to break through Rapture's thick hide, merely cracking a few of his scales. Rapture slowly turns, hissing with agitation. "We missed one." Shipley's muscles flex, again upon the trigger. The peril is much faster. Raising a hand, the boy sends out a powerful psychic wave that is too much for the man's brain to sustain. Shipley's head explodes, raining bits of brain matter and skull all around. Several of the non-crew prisoners shout out in surprise and horror. Others shout out in enjoyment. Peril is annoyed that he is having to do all of the dirty work, with the crew's powers muffled. He quickly touches a finger to Raven's temple, before the man can protest. Somehow, the boy's immense psychic prowess is able to isolate the sedatives and purge them through Raven's pores. Feeling his connection to the parasite returning, Raven expands his shadow across the hallway to paralyze several guards that run up on them. "Come on, let's go," the crew's leader urges, beginning to lead them towards the exit. "Hold on a sec," Bull says, grinning. "I have a couple of promises to keep." Raven leaves the incapacitated guards to the crew's strongman and follows Peril and Rapture out into the courtyard area. "Our ride is out front. Looks like we have a clear path," Sting says, pointing to the numerous officers strewn across the ground. "Nothing more than minor annoyances," Peril says coldly. "Even you could have killed them." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Sting shouts angrily. "Who the fuck does this pipsqueak think he is?" Raven is amazed at the carnage their liberators have been able to cause in such a short time. Of all of Khan's GX Enhanced, he's curious how this young child compares. A guard comes running from a building and raises his shotgun to fire, but Peril extends an arm, and the man drops to his knees in agony. Blood oozes from the guard's eyes, ears, and nose. "You're slow," Peril says, annoyed. "One of them's going to get the drop on you." "Who is this kid to talk to us like that?" Bull asks from behind. With the man is a sizable group of prisoners. "What are you doing?" Peril growls. "I did not say you could bring along friends." "I'm about to squash this runt," Bull growls. "I ain't about to be bossed around by no kid." Raven has a bad feeling about the child. A deep, irrational fear that he cannot shake chills his core. "I wouldn't aggravate our liberators. If Rapture respects the boy enough to bring him as his only backup, we should trust him as well." Bull shrugs, deferring to his team leader's judgment. "Whatever you say." "Take us with you," several prisoners shout. Others, just in jail for a short time, attempt to stay silent and unnoticed. "It's fine. These men will provide us with test subjects. Gather the volunteers. Terminate the rest. We can have no witnesses." "What about the rest of the guards?" Raven whispers. His face is pale and his eyes a sick yellow. Unlike Shessa's near perfect bond with the parasite, he maintains aspects of the transformation, even while in human form. With GX in his blood, he will never be a normal human being. "They won't be a problem," Peril says. Once outside the facility, they check vehicles until they find one large enough to fit all of them, and switch the plates with the van so it can't be traced back to Conco. They load the 37 volunteers into a couple of county vans with members of the crew driving. On the road, Shesha's phone rings. "Have you accomplished the mission?" Khan asks. "Affirmative. All members of the crew are accounted for." "Good. Return immediately. We have a lot to go over before Commander Hajir begins his sweep. Conco operatives enter the lobby of the main office in Clavemont, and Shesha breaks off from the group to attend to other matters. Raven instructs his team to wait downstairs while he goes up to speak with Mr. Khan alone. After passing through several security checkpoints, he finally reaches the CEO's office at the end of a long hallway. "Welcome back," Khan says, lighting a cigar. "Did you enjoy your stint?" Cocky bastard, Raven thinks, careful not to display open signs of dislike of his boss. Khan slides a manila envelope across the table towards Raven without saying another word. The crew leader picks up the envelope, straightening the tabs and opening it to remove several printed sheets containing nothing but names and addresses. "What is this?" Raven asks, examining the papers. "Are these all hits? A little excessive, even for us. The people on this list only need to be eliminated if absolutely necessary. These are high-profile extractions to be carried out in conjunction with Commander Hajir's sweep of the city. These are the names and addresses of all individuals who are not part of the initial seed community, individuals and families who have moved into town in the past 20 years. The most likely to be found uncooperative?" Raven asks. "I think I understand now. They were not part of the initial settlement and may be unable to see the bigger picture we are trying to accomplish. Persuade or remove them by force, but none of them can remain in town after tomorrow night." Raven nods, but is unnerved by the scope of his employer's machinations. An entire town to be removed of its occupants in a single night, to vanish without a trace. He shudders at the thought. Too much blood is already on our hands, he thinks, wishing he too could vanish into the night. As soon as the extraction process is complete, report to the football stadium. The true test of Project VR and the Clavemont experiment will begin there. "Yes, sir," Raven says, tucking the envelope under his arm and leaving the office. 1 year ago, Raven was part of Clavemont High's first senior class. Back then he had aspirations to leave town, become a famous horror writer. Now I'm stuck in my own horror story as one of the monsters, he thinks, disgusted at himself. Created in 1977 to house the employees of the new Conco factory, Clavemont was originally a community existing entirely under the thumb of Antonio Khan. Raven's class, the seniors of 1997, were the eldest of the initial employees and were Khan's firstborn sacrifice. Of the class of 17, only 9 bonded successfully to the GX parasite. These teens became the crew, with the strongest bonding being put in charge, Raven himself. Over the past year, 2 members of the crew have died and been replaced by subsequent generations. The only female who had been on the crew, Taryn Grosso, codenamed Siren, burned too bright and too fast during their first official mission. While infiltrating a Hartman Pharma lab, they encountered a Sakati half-breed infused security team. Forced to undergo their parasitic transformations to fight back, they were able to overcome the security team, but Siren was unable to coax her parasite into ceasing its increased metabolic response. Becoming the first to reach a second transformed state, Siren's organs were unable to handle the strain and were burned completely up. Left in hardened shell, Siren's insides were completely cooked by the intense metabolic heat. Raven recalls the irony of Siren's final transformed state, resembling a butterfly, and symbolizing the insect's entire short lifespan. A butterfly spends so much of its time and energy to transform, only to die shortly after. He recalls Taryn's, not Siren's, face, and balls his fists in anger. In high school, they were just typical teenagers. They studied, skipped classes, and worried over dates and tests. None of them could ever picture this life as it is unfolded before them. Forced servitude to the Frankenstein-like father that created their nightmares. To learn that their own parents all received their 30 pieces of silver and allowed them to be taken was too much to handle. No longer could anyone be trusted if their own parents could not. Raven remembers Siren's last moments, the fear in her eyes, as her body generated so much metabolic heat that she was cooked from the inside. This is an image and pain that he refuses to ever allow himself to forget. It gives him an edge and a purpose to continue to fight. He did this to us, and yet here I stand continuing to do his dirty work. I'm a worse monster than the so-called parents that signed our lives away in the name of science, Raven thinks with a heavy sigh. The other death in the team came from Jimmy Street, codenamed Ricochet. He was the one that all the others, Raven included, looked to for strength. Even though he was taken at the same time, his powers were more refined and polished. He was able to hone his skills in such a short time that he was both feared and respected. When transformed, the parasite turned his entire body into a living mirror that reflected any attacks back against the cause. After a successful mission of returning enemy gunfire back on them and single-handedly cleaning out the opposition forces, Ricochet was up for the promotion to Commander Hajir's team. Yet Raven could see the sadness in his friend's eyes. "We're all damned souls," Jimmy whispered after the mission. "We take lives. We know that murder's wrong, and yet we go play soldiers and trudge along with our orders each day. We're devils." Raven found out the next day that his friend swallowed a shotgun shell later that night. From the inside, the parasite was not able to reflect the attack. "We will all break. It's inevitable," he had said, already knowing that he would take his life. Some of us sooner than others. When will my time be to break, Raven wonders. When will I no longer be able to endure this guilt? On that, Raven returns to the lobby and his team. "Let's go. We have another job to prepare for," he says, walking past the others and out the front doors. Dr. Smith stands over Jake's body, rubbing his temples in frustration. "I don't get it," the man groans. "I've never seen anyone have no effect to the parasite. Everyone else has either shown signs of partial bonding or been rejected entirely." "Maybe he is immune due to not being a full human," Ionaro suggests. "He is the first Sakari we have ever attempted experimentation on." "He is only Sakari in spirit," Deborah argues. "Genetically, this boy is no different from any other subject we've chosen. He does not have any Sakari blood or DNA flowing through him. Whatever composes his bond with Yamura is purely metaphysical. I do not believe the problem with compatibility lies in any lack of humanity." "Then what?" Smith asks, at his wit's end. "What other possible explanations are we left with? I've administered 3 different GX cocktails with fully functioning parasites days apart from each other, and we've seen no results either for or against bonding. Rejection begins within hours, and a positive bonding usually manifests physical changes in only minutes. It's as if we're injecting the boy with fucking saline solution." "Perhaps GX is not the route we need to take with this subject," Deborah suggests. "What do you propose?" Smith asks suspiciously. "The control chip that Dr. Jenkins created for the virtual biosuit to regulate the parasite's influence on the wearer. Do you think that could be modified to control a person directly?" "Are you saying that you would like to attempt something so complicated and advanced as a mind control device on a creature we know next to nothing about?" Smith laughs nervously. "Maybe we should ask the expert in that field." He looks around. "Oh wait, that's right. You fucking killed him already." Deborah growls, balling her fists. Don't push me, Smith. What? You'll kill me too? He takes a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Sometimes I find it hard to believe you're a brilliant peer of mine, and not another one of Shesha's primitive mercenaries. I've been reading up on Dr. Jenkins' schematics and notes, Lynn speaks up. I can't say that engineering is my field of expertise, but it looks like he modeled the suit's wiring on the human nervous system. If the wiring's aligned with nerves, I don't see why it would not be possible to implant a similarly functioning chip in the host's brain. We would just have to rewrite the coding and change its functionality from controlling parasitic metabolic changes into regulating motor functions without command data. Smith looks over at Deborah, grinning arrogantly. See? This is why you do not assassinate members of your research team. Even those with moral objections can still contribute in their own ways to the group's success. Deborah curses, storming off in anger. Do what you will. I have Project VR to focus on. Don't waste all of your time playing with the Sakari. Remember that we're still on a deadline. Thank you for your assistance, Smith tells Lynn. I will put some of my team on Dr. Jenkins' notes and begin working on the Sakari control device. I still think all of this is wrong, Lynn admits. But I have my family to think about. That woman's not above killing her own allies. I have no reason to believe that she's bluffing when she says she'll have my cousin Lisa killed. Smith nods. Your instincts are correct. Deborah Rood is the most ruthless and uncaring person I've ever met. In another life, she would be in charge of a company like this, not Antonio Khan. Because she also possesses the GX parasite, her emotions are amplified and she's even more dangerous. Not even I trust her. When this is over, will she kill us anyways? Deborah values usefulness over all other traits. So long as we provide her with future use, she will not get rid of us. Though she will never admit so, I believe she regrets killing Jenkins, after seeing how his expertise could have still been of great use. Deborah enters the makeshift office she has set up on the second floor of the warehouse, and immediately slams her fist against the metal wall. The steel bends inward around the woman's fist. Deborah does not even acknowledge the impact as painful. There are too many variables right now, she mutters. Too many ways they can fuck this up. We've prepared for the success of these projects for so many years. Why did this Yamura have to show up and divert our resources? Why does Khan want a Sakari soldier so badly? We're on the verge of creating the perfect GX-enhanced weapon. One fully controllable with zero defects. As always, no matter what he achieves, Khan always thirsts for more. Deborah begins to chuckle, a few streams of blood beginning to run down her arm. That man is more like a fire than a human being, always consuming and growing more powerful. I think he'll never be satisfied. Even if he had control of this entire world, he would begin looking to the stars for conquest. It's quite admirable, really. I wish my own aspirations were that grand. I cannot see anything beyond the success of Project VR and Project Clavemont. I have tunnel vision in that regard. While Khan is always able to see the bigger picture, I envy his vision. And Delgion in the astral realm. Danny's focus is intense. She concentrates every cell of her body on the task at hand. Sweat drips from her forehead, but she does not even blink. Blinking would result in a break in concentration, even if for just a millisecond. Visualizing the Yazitan symbols for fire and wind, she attempts to combine the two elements into a stronger spell. You're losing it, Allura coaches. Weave a small amount of spirit into the spell to hold the elements together. Danny collapses with exhaustion. Damn, she pants. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. I've been at this for over a week and I don't feel like I'm making any progress. You're not doing that bad, Allura says. You have to remember that you're getting the crash course in this. Most trainees are eased into this stuff over the span of months. You only have a few more weeks to cram years' worth of training in order to achieve the apprentice requirements. Did you struggle with it? Danny asks. Allure laughs. I still struggle. The elemental magics are more heavily leaned on for combat, and that's just not what I'm very good at. What kind of role is it that you specialize in, if not combat? I use illusion and transformation magics. I can use magical tools and spirit energy to create disguises. I'm considered more of a team prep mage than a traditional support role. It still sounds pretty useful. The magical tools do most of the work. The only reason I was able to promote, really, was that I created all of my own tools. The elders decided the creation of magical tools requires the same fundamental skills as creating a spell, so I passed. Danny's eyes widen. That's insane. You make your own tools? Allure smiles. Yeah, I think I actually impressed a few of the elders. It sort of makes up for my deficits in other areas. What kind of tools did you create? Originally, it was just a rouge that would change your skin color, but I've since created an entire makeup kit. Allure proudly shows off a purse full of magical tools. Wow, Danny says. They look just like ordinary makeup. Allure nods. That's the point. She pulls out a brush and touches it to her other hand. Infusing spirit energy through the tool, she's able to create the illusion of a fancy black glove on her hand. My tools are useful for the more secretive operations. Danny smacks her cheeks with both of her hands in order to psych herself up. Alright, let's try this again. I need to get this figured out so I can move on to the next step. The longer it takes me to do the basic shit, the less time I'll have later on for the harder tasks. Allure nods. You have manifesting the individual elements down. You're even able to manifest multiple individual elements at once. As soon as you combine the elements to each other, you'll be able to regulate the amounts of the individual elements in relation to each other and begin to perform a variety of different spells. And then, be able to create my own unique spell in order to pass the test. Danny manifests the elements of fire and wind. I better get it right this time. I can't afford any setbacks. Emile Roche storms past Khan's security and kicks open his door, enraged. The two guards rush forward and press the tips of their guns into the back of her skull. She does not seem intimidated by the gesture. Stand down, Khan says with a smile and holding up his hand. She only wishes to voice her concerns with me. I will be quite all right. The guards nod, backing away immediately. They're not in the position to question Khan's orders and return to their duties. How dare you? Emile growls, shaking a balled fist at the CEO of Conco. How dare I what, my dear? He never loses his smile. Unnerving most opposition, Emile is unaffected by his charms. You've captured that traitorous vermin Yamura, and have had him held in captivity for days without notifying me. My dear Emile, I have never made any oath to answer to you or your imaginary queen. I appreciate your assistance, and in return, I have been most hospitable towards you, have I not? Emile feels anger flash even brighter. In the past, she has used her sexuality and feminine wiles to get what she wants, yet Khan has manipulated her without her being the wiser. It was not she who was leading him. Antonio Khan was in full control from the beginning. The curiosity instilled in me by you and your tales of the Sakari have helped me alter my plans to incorporate their amazing abilities into my future projects. Turning a prize specimen like Yamura over to you is quite simply impossible. Kill him now, Emile warns. Yamura is clever and resourceful. He will escape your bonds. Yamura is being converted into a loyal puppet as we speak. Your fear of him is no longer necessary. I assure you that he will soon become quite harmless. Khan's grin changes, becoming more sinister. Except to those I wish harm to befall. I will confer with Queen Inyana. She will not be pleased. Khan nods, and Emile leaves the office. He taps the intercom to his secretary. Rebecca, please send some champagne up to my guest suite. It seems I will need to smooth over a disagreement if I wish for our alliance to continue. Yes, sir. It'll be up in a moment. While you're at it, please make sure that all food going into that room contains sedatives. I fear that soon our guest may become violent. Khan sighs and looks over the files lying on his desk. Numerous filed reports from Rapture and the Special Operations Force detail the collection efforts of obtaining more live subjects in and around his various facilities. With the Sakari, we'll be able to push experimentation much further without fear of killing our specimen. The durability of this race has already been confirmed by all staff present during Yamura's battle with Rapture. Without the parasite, Yamura could defeat even my best fighters. Khan begins to laugh to himself. With the parasite, Yamura will set the world to burn. Clavemont High School, September 3rd, 1998. After postponing the football game Friday night and canceling classes for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Clavemont High School resumes normal operations, albeit with enhanced security and caution. Many of the staff and parents argued for a longer period off, but pressure from beyond the administration, namely from Antonio Khan, the school is reopened. Several of the main hallways remain lined with caution tape, and Coach E's classroom in particular is completely blocked off. Many of the chemicals stored in his closet are toxic, and crews from several counties have had to join together in the removal of any that were opened or damaged. With his classroom closed, Coach E's science lectures are instead being held in the repurposed library until further notice. Coach E is angered at losing his classroom. For years, the room has been his haven. Even when Claudia was sick, he was able to unwind his stress and lose himself in his books and research papers. Delving into experiments, he was able to relive his days as a lab technician at the university. Now, so much of what he saw as an extension of his own self is gone forever. Digging into rumors and hearsay, he is able to learn that the same men who broke into the school and left so much damage sprung from jail shortly after being arrested. From what he was able to get from the police and guards in Barrington, the attackers were all former Clavemont graduates between the ages of 19 and 22. Worse yet, many were former students of his. He finds it difficult to believe teenagers that once sat in his class could be responsible for so much mayhem and destruction. His students could have been killed in the attack, and he wonders what their actual intentions really were. What exactly did those former students want with the current ones? Was this some sloppily executed ransoming attempt? This also makes him question how they failed in their efforts. Rumors circulate of a mysterious young man that no one saw, yet somehow single-handedly took out all of the would-be abductors, except the driver who escaped. Had he only heard of this ordeal rather than experienced it himself, he would likely find the tale impossible to believe. Being present until the moment he was knocked unconscious, he knows that many strange things did in fact transpire. The men were all odd, possessing an otherworldly feel to them. Each was abnormally strong and fast, as if they were no longer fully human. Coach E shakes his head, trying to push this line of thought away. Despite the stories he's heard of Konko's dark dealings, he cannot believe they have discovered a method to making humans into monsters. He cannot, however, completely shake these doubts. The men that sprung their comrades from jail were described as being brutally efficient, taking out all security and sustaining no injuries to their own detail. They were said to have had demonstrated inhuman feats of strength and speed, and scaled walls that no human man could have done without equipment. The students begin to trickle into the library, and Coach E immediately notices they are distraught. None of them want to be here. They shouldn't have to be back here yet. What are those clowns downtown thinking? These kids are traumatized. They need time to recover. Are they really that uncaring and out of touch with human emotion? Taking attendance, he realizes that many students that should be present are not. He hopes that their parents merely went against the administration and kept their children home. The alternative is too terrible for him to even think about. Their community is already being torn apart by the rash of disappearances. To add even more to the list of those already gone would just be too much for the youth to handle. The voice of Principal Priest sounds over the Clavemont High School's PA system. Students and faculty, after last week's disruption, we must read off a list of missing students. If any of you have any information regarding their whereabouts, please see me or contact Detective Parker of the Medina Police Department. Please have a good and productive day despite the circumstances. As Priest begins to read off the list, Coach E shakes his head in sadness. Despite the injuries he suffered, he never once considered not showing up for work. To him, teaching is not just a profession, but a life's work. He feels that if he can reach these kids, that one day they will make a better world than his generation ever could. He wonders why school wasn't canceled, and why the community is acting like nothing happened, despite the attack being a terrorist-level threat that should be the top story of every news station across the country. Something about the entire thing is unsettling, and he tries to take in all the information that he can about the situation. We have another 3 missing today, Coach E whispers to himself. Why do I fear they won't be the last? After school, Tiny Sterling sits on the steps of the post office downtown with a small group of his friends. He pops the top open of a can of beer and takes a long drink, having no fear of getting in trouble, as the police force in Clavemont are supporters of his team. Stacy and 2 of her girlfriends sit beside him, and he hands each of them their own can without saying a word. I heard that Michael and Lee are also among those missing. How are you going to play short so many players? Stacy asks, opening her drink with a hiss. Coach is bumping up a few players from JV, Tiny replies, deeply depressed. Where's Butch at? Shouldn't he be getting ready for the game? Stacy asks, looking around. She tries not to let her concern for her friend betray more emotion than just that, yet it is difficult. For 3 years in secret, Butch and Stacy have kept hidden their intimacy. The entire time Butch was dating Lisa Jordan, he was still seeing Stacy on the side. Stacy never minded. She knew that the relationship between those two was never for anything other than social elevation. It is expected for the star of the football team to be dating a varsity cheerleader. If he deviated from that norm and made public his relationship with the vulgar, cigarette-smoking, class-skipping delinquent, he'd lose all of his social standing. In high school, one cannot become a pariah. Convinced that it was she who was the true object of Butch's love, Stacy never once made any attempt to out him publicly. In time, she knew that the cheerleader would be discarded, and she would still be there waiting for him. I don't know. He hasn't shown up for the last few practices. Coach has even threatened to give his varsity spot to Cheney if he keeps it up. His head ain't right, but I don't know why, Tiny replies, finishing his beer and removing another from its insulated cooler. Even kept in the cooler, they're all still warm, due to sitting in the trunk of Tiny's car all day. He enjoys practice much more if he begins his drills with a decent buzz going in. He can't drink too much, though. Becoming fully drunk and sweating out alcohol during suicide drills would make the name very apt. He might get booted off the team? Stacy is shocked. Butch has never cared about anything more than football. In her time with him, he never gave the impression that he was burnt out on going to practices. She feels a pain in her chest, wondering what else he may be keeping from her. At least for a couple of games. I asked him why he's been ditching, but he's been really evasive about it. So you don't even know where he is right now? Stacy's heart flutters. She's fearful of what trouble Butch may be in, or if he has found someone else that he feels he needs to keep a secrecy from her. Not really, Tiny shrugs. He heads east after school every day that he misses practice. Aside from that, I can't tell. There isn't much out east of town.
A lot of woods and farmland as far as I know. Maybe he has a part-time job and is ashamed to tell anyone. Stacy agrees that it's strange behavior, considering that Butch lives on the north side of town, about 2 blocks past where Brian Rood and Stacy herself live. Living only a few houses down from Butch, Stacy has enjoyed the convenience and frequency of their time together. Down the street, one of Con's vans sits unseen. "Don't move until you receive my signal," Peril says, opening the rear door. One of the men rolls his eyes. "Can't believe we're actually taking orders from a fucking child." Peril turns, his body heat rising with parasitic metabolism. "Is taking orders from a child a problem for you?" Peril asks. He invades the man's mind, crushing it telepathically. The man convulses, blood oozing from his ears. "Do not question my authority." A flash of light catches Stacy's attention, and she glances over to see Tiny's beer can explode in his hand. Alcohol sprays all over both of them, and Stacy reels back, temporarily blinded by the foamy liquid. "Not bad," Shesha says from across the street. "Your aim is getting pretty good." Peril holds his left arm out, snapping his fingers and sending a second concentration of energy across the road. Tiny's ear is blown off in a flash of blood, leaving the large teen screaming in pain. "Easy, we need them alive," Shesha cautions. He doubts the stability of the boy, and wonders if he could turn against them at any moment. Peril sends out another energy bullet, hitting Tiny in the forehead. The force is dialed back, just enough so that while it knocks him back, it does not penetrate his skull. A single line of blood runs down between Tiny's eyes. "He's too fat for the parasite," Peril says without emotion. "Killing him would be a justice." "Follow your orders," Shesha commands. "We are to gather as many children of the seed families alive as possible. Both of these students are offspring of Conco technicians and are priority targets." Peril appears in front of the teenagers, causing them to drop their beers in surprise. "Go to sleep," Peril says, entering their minds and shutting down their brain processes one by one. Tiny resists, shaking his head and charging the boy with right hook. Peril sidesteps and backhands him through the post office windows, wanting to kill him for his defiance. Peril thinks better of it. Anyone who can momentarily resist his power must be a special person. The other teens drop to the ground except for Stacy, who keeps her eyes closed and screams as she tries to get Peril out of her mind. "Two who can resist me back to back?" Peril is surprised and tries to force his presence over her and subdue hers. Pulling out a knife and blindly swinging, Stacy manages to back Peril off enough for her to make a run for it. The boy grinds his teeth in anger, blood running down his arm from the cut. Green scales materialize around the wound and on his cheeks as his eyes turn to thin slits, amidst a sea of yellow. Peril turns his head to the side, noticing an 18-wheeler stopped at a red light. Invading the driver's mind, Peril causes him to release the brakes and put his foot on the gas. The truck knocks several other cars out of the way, barreling towards Stacy. Horns blare, and the girl looks over at the commotion just in time to become a red stain on the semi's grill. "We were supposed to bring them in alive," one of the squad members shouts, running up to Peril. "The others are. Go get them," Peril says calmly, walking away. The truck driver rocks back and forth in his cab in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. Shesha rips the man's door off and grabs him by the collar, hurling him from the vehicle. "Things were not meant to play out this way." He reveals his teeth have become fangs with a smile. "Children, what are you going to do, am I right?" Shesha laughs, cutting the man down with his elongated claws. Jake has a hard time maneuvering through the darkness, tripping over something and catching himself with his hands. A loud hissing follows, and Jake assumes he either tripped over a so-called reject's leg or a sleeping python. He can feel the mist of saliva being sprayed into the room from the initial opening of the creature's mouth, and smells the sour stench of its hot breath. He assumes the body that the leg belongs to must be a real looker, someone that only a mother could love. That mother were also a hideous, disfigured reptilian humanoid. Jake shudders, imagining the human-snake hybrid that is hissing angry warnings inches away from him. "Easy, Serpentor, I didn't mean to trip over you. I just can't see shit down here," Jake explains, trying to smooth things over. With the GX parasite in their blood, Jake figures he could still beat any of the rejects in a fight. The problem is that he is at so much of a disadvantage in the darkness that he isn't sure that he could even land a single punch. "Calm down, Raymond. He isn't our enemy," another voice, this one female, says. "He has no parasite in his blood," Raymond Strong hisses, smelling Jake with rapidly darting tongue. "He was only sent here as food." "So totally not food," Jake protests. "Must have really been down here a long time if you're prepared to feast on Manwich." They are irregular with their feedings. They have skipped us for days at a time, even neglecting to give us water. We'd have died of thirst long ago if this pit did not collect condensation along its walls, the female explains. "Wonderful," Jake sighs. "Licking walls and cannibalism. Good times." "Why are you here? You do not have a parasite?" Randall asks. "Funny story. You see, I had one earlier, but then my demon went and killed the thing. It was actually a little sad. I felt a bit sorry for it." "Your demon?" Randall's voice inflects, and Jake realizes that even mutant snake men can still be surprised by the revelation of the supernatural. "That's right. I'm a human being bonded to an ancient Sakari spirit named Ymura. There wasn't enough room in there for 3 of us." Jake focuses his energy, managing to condense a small blue glow in his palm, large enough to add illumination to the pit. He looks up from the floor to see a young woman, maybe 23, standing before him. Once she may have been pretty, slender with curly hair and curves. Now a row of scales covers her right cheek, and the same eye's iris is yellow with a slitted pupil. "Where are we now? Are we still in Khan's warehouse of horrors?" "They call this place the pit. All of us rejects are dumped here until we die," the woman says, uncomfortable, brushing her hair across her face to try and cover her deformities. Jake notices her self-consciousness and tries to ease the tension. "What's your name?" He cannot help but think of the similarity to meeting Mallory like this, and hopes the girl escaped. "Elle Maddox," she says, feeling a bit better. "I'm Jake Stewart," Jake says, moving further into the room where several dozen other rejects are cowering in fear and depression. Some seem to be further gone than others, appearing more reptile than human, and showing signs of decay where the parasite has fed on them too long. "Elle, how long do they have before they take us out with the rest of the garbage?" 4 days ago, the first of us were dumped in here. No one from the previous group was still alive when we were put in. They've probably been doing this for years. They let the parasite burn through us until we die, or we turn into monsters and kill each other. Some of us can hold out longer, but eventually we all die or mutate. Sometimes they take a couple of us to help them track outside the facility. Makes sense. When someone escapes, they'd use the parasites with dying hosts. The parasite would be able to seek out a new host to infect before croaking. We need to escape. The further these rejects mutate, the more their minds deteriorate. They will eventually go mad just before they perish, and attack us in an attempt to find a new victim, Ymura says. "Speaking of which," Jake looks down, seeing a mass of bloodied foreign cells at Ymura's feet. "I take it you were able to deal with the newest intruder?" "The last of the parasite they infected us with isn't dead. It will be of no more trouble." "What about the exit?" "It is the same as the other, reinforced steel. Take another coordinated effort with the outside for us to escape." "This is wrong," Jonas says to his wife, arguing in their kitchen. Brian returns from the restroom, stopping to listen as he overhears his parents' heated argument. "You knew this was coming since before he was born. This is the entire reason for his existence," Deborah shouts. "They're children. We can't do this to any of them, especially not our own." Deborah backhands him with her coffee mug, shattering it across his face. "We've been preparing for this for nearly 2 decades. You will not screw this up with your sudden fondness for the boy. If your conscience gets in the way, I will kill you." "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jonas asks, looking up at the woman from the floor. Blood runs down his chin and neck. "You should have given yourself the parasite like me," Deborah growls. "Your weakness is disgusting." "I'm glad I didn't. That way I never have to become a monster like you." Deborah grinds her teeth together in anger. "One command," she says. "Just one command, and I can send you walking right out in front of a bus, or make you put the barrel of a gun into your mouth and squeeze the trigger. Don't fuck with me." Was our entire life together a lie? Did none of it matter? Are you stupid? Playing house like this was part of the plan from the very fucking beginning. We were never a couple. You knew this. Our union was to bring together the project's greatest minds to create the perfect specimen for the biosuit. I cannot believe you were fooled by an illusion that you helped fabricate. Brian backs into his room in fear and confusion. Locking the door behind him, he drops to the floor in tears. Deborah opens up her phone and dials Commander Hajir. "You will have to organize the pickup. We will not be able to deliver ourselves." 20 minutes later, a black van pulls up to the Rude home, and from it exits Raven and the crew. Watching from his window, Brian sees the same mutants that attacked his classroom, and is filled with unrelenting horror. "Don't let your guard down. The same bastard that attacked us at the school could be lurking around here," Raven cautions his team. The door ajar, Raven cautiously extends his shadow into the home. Before entering, closing his eyes, he is able to see what his shadow sees within the Rude home. "One person is downstairs," Raven says, his eyes still tightly shut. "Our target is on the 2nd floor." Scorp and Bull form up on their leader, awaiting his go order. "Why are we priority snatching a punk-ass kid?" Sting says from behind, keeping his eyes focused on the 2nd floor windows and watching for any escape attempts. "Our quarry is the only son of 2 project supervisors. Our orders are to bring him in alive and unharmed," Raven explains, opening up his eyes and pulling his shadow back to him. The few scales manifested on his cheeks begin to fade as he relaxes his parasite's agitation. "Right, but it's not like we're going to do some extraction job. He's targeted for experimentation. Why the hell is he so special?" "That ice-cold bitch has probably been experimenting on this kid for years. You really think she cares one lick about anyone but herself?" Scorp asks. Raven holds up a fist, telling his team to be silent. He waves Scorp and Bull inside before following from behind. Scorp turns the handle of the first door they approach, and tenses when the door pushes back into him, opening from the other side. "Don't piss yourself. It's just that ice-cold bitch," Deborah grins. The men shift uncomfortably, fearful of the woman's hidden power. They have all seen her abilities demonstrated in diabolical ways. "He's upstairs. I heard his footsteps in the hallway while I was arguing with Jonas. I think he suspects something." "You should have been more careful. This could jeopardize everything if he knows we're here to grab him." "Don't lecture me. You're just the hired help. Nothing more than a guinea pig who got lucky and didn't die like the others." Raven holds back his anger and goes upstairs, leading his team into position. On the 2nd floor, Bull kicks open the nearest door, and Scorp ducks inside to sweep the room quickly. No one is found present, so the team moves on to the next room. "Clear," Scorp whispers. They move forward to the next door. When the door doesn't budge, Bull moves up into position and rams it with his shoulder. As soon as the door is ripped off its hinges, Brian rushes it and drives the tip of a model rocket deep into the soft flesh of the mutant's collar. Without being transformed by the GX parasite, Bull's skin is no different from any other human, and he howls in pain as blood sprays from the wound in a high-pressure stream. "We have a runner on the 2nd floor," Sting relays into his radio as Brian climbs out from his window and begins to descend down the lattice, running vertically along the house. Sting raises his right arm, preparing to release a venomous pulse blast to bring the boy down. "He's outside. After him," Raven orders, pushing the others down the stairs quickly. Darkhold pushes Sting's arms down quickly before he can release the attack. "Knock it off. You'll make him fall, then he could break his neck. So what? Sting shrugs. Shit happens in the heat of the moment. Our orders are to bring in the rude boy alive and unharmed.
What do you think would happen to us if we failed those parameters with a project supervisor's son?
Sting pictures Deborah using her parasitic powers to cause his head to explode in a bloody flash. Shuddering, the warrior can only nod and obey. Brian reaches the ground and breaks off into a sprint away from the home. After several minutes of running, he throws his back against a tree, breathing heavily. Fear and confusion, that way, Nirvana says, pointing towards a fenced-in yard behind the rude home. The crew surrounds the yard, boxing the teenager in. You can't get away from us, Raven says. You might as well give up and come out nice and slowly if you don't want to get hurt. Darkhold expands his awareness, activating his GX parasite. Latching to any trace of negativity in a target's heart, he is able to fill that person with bursts of white-hot pain. Brian drops to his knees, clutching his chest. The teen struggles for each breath as the pain is excruciating. Attached to Brian's hatred of Butch Harper, his negative emotions are turned against him. What the hell, Sting complains. You can hurt him, but I can't? This pain is purely psychological. Not a mark will be left on the boy, Darkhold replies with a smile. Thrashing through the front door onto the porch and tearing a hole in the wall in his rage, Bull emerges from the home, snarling. The flesh around his neck has been healed and covered over by a thick layer of greenish-gray scales. His adrenaline and anger are astronomical, and he can only think of tearing the incapacitated youth to shreds.
Everyone needs to get control of themselves, Raven says with irritation,
stepping onto Bull's shadow and paralyzing it so that the hulking fighter is unable to move. Our emotions are running too high. Someone is going to get careless and get one of us hurt or killed if this continues. Bull continues to struggle against Raven's power, foaming spittle being flung from his snapping jaws each time he attempts to lunge forward. The crew's leader slides his heel down to the neck of Bull's shadow, driving his face flat to the earth. Stand down, Raven growls. Don't make me say it a second time. His skin is now covered completely in dark scales, and his eyes glow a bright yellow. The GX parasite within Raven screams for him to make the kill, but he suppresses the urge. Beginning to control his breathing and force the parasite back into dormancy, Bull calms considerably. With so much excitement, it's difficult to shut the parasitic organism down, but eventually it relents. Restrain the boy and load up. We're moving out, Raven orders, walking back to the van. After apprehending Brian, the crew leaves with Deborah following them back to the facility to oversee her son's trials personally. Jonas holds an ice pack to his face, sitting on the porch. He needs your help. This town is built on lies and madness. You can help me end this, Rick says, approaching Brian's father. Why didn't you step in to help? You know as well as I do that I couldn't defeat the entirety of the crew in battle. I was able to catch them unaware once. I won't get that opportunity again. Rick looks down at the man, wishing things were different for him. Besides, your wife was still here. I understand. Deborah alone could shut down an entire army's minds.
If we want to get past her, we're going to have to be much more clever.
All of Commander Hajir's forces are mobilizing for the final phase. They'll be spread pretty thin. If we can attack them from multiple points, we might be able to throw a wrench in their plans, Jonas says. Rick nods. I'm going to get your son, and if I'm right, there'll still be a powerful ally held captive there. Are you talking about that Sakari, Yamura? I don't know his name, but if you mean the guy that fought Rapture to a standstill, then yeah. If you can get him free of the facility and past Rapture, he could take out nearly all of Hajir's forces. That's what I'm hoping. Can I count on your support? I can't take these guys alone. If Rapture or your wife join in the battle, I'm screwed. Jonas goes into the house, returning with a briefcase. This is a prototype biosuit, like the one worn by Scarab. Take it. It might give you the edge you need against even someone as powerful as Rapture. Opening the case, Rick sees a suit of black and white armor, mask-like helmet of thinner material. The entire suit is light, and Rick is surprised to learn that it can absorb most attacks, and even deflect some gunfire. Rick takes the equipment, and the two of them strategize their crucial next moves. If you squeeze the palms like so, you can fire metallic tethers, Jonas says, removing one of the gauntlets and demonstrating its weaponry by firing a tether onto the wall. Stick someone with this, and you can electrocute them, even if they're grounded against your traditional attacks. You still haven't suggested what I'm going to do if your wife joins the battle. If she uses her powers, she can just walk me into traffic or make me eat a bullet. There's no way I can think of to get around that ability. Jonas smiles. I modified the suit to have contingencies against Deborah. Despite her being my wife, somewhere deep down I always feared that she'd prove to be dangerous. I lined the helmet with a lead aluminum alloy. No one will be able to penetrate your mind with psychic invasion. You need to be standing by. Once I get your son out, there won't be time to breathe. When we get out, we'll need you to be around as a getaway. For you and him, there'll be no looking back. No Conco, no Clavemont, no hiding. You'll have to leave and start somewhere new. If any of them survive, they'll always be looking for us. I know, Jonas nods. I've already thought a lot about it. This will be our final act of defiance towards Khan. Even if he continues his plans, we will be elsewhere. I'll do whatever I can to protect my son, and keep him from those monsters. Let's hope that our efforts tonight will do more than just delay Khan's plans. I intend to permanently put an end to that bastard for all the pain he's caused.